Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar from the New England Federation of Humane Societies. My name is Crystal Arnott, and I am a board member with the New England Federation of Humane Societies and the executive director of Lowell Humane Society in Massachusetts. We're here today with Brad Shear, CEO of the Potter League for Animals in Rhode Island, for Enrichment Best Practices. I'm going to just do a few housekeeping items, and then I'll pass things right over to Brad. Please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're from, what org and state, and what you do for your organization, and maybe share how long you've been in the field. I really want to just make sure we also thank our sponsors. So thank you to ASPCA, VCA Animal Hospitals, the HSUS, MSPCA Angel, and our possum partners, Save One Soul Animal Rescue League, for being able to sponsor these webinars and help us bring this information right to you. We also want to make sure everyone knows about next month's webinar. We are going to have Compassion Fatigue, the Foundation session with Jessica Dolce on February 12th. So please go ahead and register for that. You can get that right on our website. And also our registration for our conference is now open. So please join us. We're going to be right in Massachusetts this year at the Boston Marriott Burlington. We have a great lineup for you. So check out that schedule online on our website, newenglandfed.org, and go ahead and register to get that early bird pricing. And last but not least, you can also get your New England Fed gear. We have an Etsy shop with the softest sweatshirts in the universe and some other really fantastic merch. So check that out if you're looking for gifts for your pet sitters. There are some cute mugs and other things. And any of the animal people in your life would love to have this stuff. It is a great option to buy for a gift for someone and help us keep continuing to offer things like our conference and these webinars throughout the year. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Brad Shear, doing a webinar today on enrichment best practices. Brad is a fellow New England Federation of Humane Societies board member and CEO of Rhode Island's Potter League for Animals. Brad has a long history in animal welfare in various parts of the country, including New York, Georgia, and Colorado. Please submit any questions or comments in the chat, and we'll save them for the end to share with Brad. And we look forward to hearing this great session today.
All set?
All set.
All right. Thank you for that. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending. So what I am going to talk to you a little bit about today, I'm going to give you an overview of a document that was created a few years ago by a committee that I chaired within the Association for Animal Welfare Advancement. If you're not familiar with the association, at the end, I'm going to give you a link to their website where you can also download the entire document as well as some other guides and helpful materials about instituting a really organized formal enrichment program in your organization. And the association is an association of individuals, so anyone can join as an individual who works in the industry and have access to some great resources and collaboration with people from all over the country. So I think, well, let's see if that works. For some reason, I'm not advancing. All right. There we go. So again, I am the CEO of the Potter League for Animals in Rhode Island, and the CAWA stands for Certified Animal Welfare Administrator, which is a certification through the association. The Potter League has been around for 95 years with our animal care center in Middletown, a spay and neuter clinic in Warwick, Rhode Island, the west part of the state, and a full-service veterinary clinic called the Pets in Need Clinic in East Providence, which is sort of the north central part of the state. So a little bit about what a best practice means. Best practice is really what we see as what is the ideal. What if you did everything? What would that look like? And it's probably, we acknowledge, just aspirational for some organizations to say, we're going to do absolutely everything that I talk about today. That's not necessarily the expectation, We hope that everyone will strive to achieve that best practice level, but there should at least be some minimum standards in terms of care. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but no animal should just be in a kennel with absolutely nothing to enrich their stay. We understand that to do everything that I'm going to talk about today could be a challenge for some. And within that document that I told you about, that you can download for free from the association's site, it outlines well what is at least a minimum that people should achieve. So what is enrichment? So it's, as it says, a process for improving the environment and behavioral care of confined animals in the context of their behavioral needs. So really, the concept started in zoos long before we started doing this kind of work in animal well-being in our shelters, partially because if you go back to the 60s, 70s, when this was happening, being developed in zoos, animals weren't staying very long in our shelters. They were being euthanized early, and in more recent years, we've had animals stay longer for weeks, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. And when animals are in any kind of confined environment, no matter how big it is, no matter how nice it is, they're going to need progressively more enrichment and more behavioral care. Of course, the hope is that they're not going to be there nearly that long. So really, the concept of enrichment has come to our sector fairly recently in the scheme of the types of organizations that care for animals, because our confinements just haven't been that long historically. So what we want to do with enrichment, of course, we want to reduce stress. We want to make behavioral health better. When, especially even more for cats and for dogs, you'll see an impact on illness when we reduce stress and we allow animals to express their normal behaviors. And when they express normal behaviors and they're healthy and they have an appearance of friendliness and comfort, they're going to get adopted more quickly. You're going to reduce length of stay. Of course, if you don't have to treat sick animals, you don't have to quarantine them somewhere and put them on medication and then take them out of the adoption flow for potentially weeks at a time. And it's important because some of you have seen this, if you don't provide an enriched environment for animals, you can start seeing them to develop problematic behaviors. One of the most common ones you'll see, if you've seen dogs just spinning and spinning in their kennels, it's called the stereotypic behavior. It's something that is abnormal, that is often caused by long confinement. And you could see other things. Sometimes you'll see them become more reserved. Sometimes you'll see aggression. Sometimes you'll see all kinds of other behaviors. But we can help fend off those behaviors by providing animals with an enriched environment. So all of our best practices have been sort of fundamentally grounded in the five freedoms. If you're familiar with the five freedoms, I don't need to go through all of them, sort of common language, but at the very minimum, freedom from hunger and thirst. Everybody should have the food and water they need. We'll talk about how you feed them, could be an enriching experience. Freedom from discomfort. Again, it's part of enrichment for them to have a comfortable resting area and maybe a variety of them. Freedom from pain, injury, and disease. Everyone should get treatment for illness. Freedom to express normal behaviors is especially important in this context that we're going to talk about. So animals should be able to do what they normally do. And freedom from fear and distress. Probably number 5 is the most difficult thing for us to do in our environments because they're just inherently stressful. It is inherently stressful for animals to be taken from the home that they've known and be put in a different environment of any kind, but especially one that's so unusual like ours, where they usually have less human contact, maybe are around animals they've never been around before. There's so many stressful things, and this is really what we're pushing back against. It is important to understand that, well, for some reason, my picture has overwritten my words, but shelter's not home. So no matter what you do in terms of enriching the environment in your shelter, it is not going to be a home for an animal. Ultimately, our goal is to put all our animals into a home, just like this one, where they wear a scarf and fit in the family picture. But we don't recommend, just because you have the best enrichment program in the world, that you feel like animals should then be housed in your facility for a very long term. For long in this context is really more than a couple of weeks. When an animal's confined for more than 2 weeks, we start seeing stress levels rise even more, even with good enrichment, and you progressively need to increase what you're doing for them. It's also important to understand that enrichment is not behavior modification. So if you have a very shy animal and you or an aggressive animal or an animal that has an unwelcome behavior that you're trying to change, the strategies that I'm going to talk about today are not intended to modify behavior. They're really intended to maintain normal behaviors. If you are not providing enrichment in a methodical, organized way, you're probably not ready to work on behavior modification. This is the baseline before you do that. So some things to think about when we're enriching animals. It is possible that some activities that you engage in can make them overstimulated, get them too excited, especially younger animals that are normally excited. So we've got to pay attention. There's no one size fits all. Every animal should get a certain thing. So we got to pay attention to them getting overstimulated. We want to look at what their likes are. My dog doesn't love peanut butter. We seem to put peanut butter in every Kong in every shelter. He would probably ignore it. I don't know why. He's weird that way. But so we got to pay attention to whether something that you give them is something they like or maybe something they fear. The other is to provide variety. So the same thing every day. As you can see, the bored cat. If you do the same thing every day, it could get boring. And we always want the reinforcement to be positive. We want it to be something good. We don't do, and we'll talk about training a little bit. We don't do any training with any kind of aversives in this context. So thinking again about individuals, you can see there's some dogs like this dog that can be easily stimulated, and sometimes reducing stimulation, giving them quiet time. We're going to talk about sound a little bit, can be just as important as getting them out, running them around, giving them exercise. But sometimes training techniques that teach them to be calmer and sit quietly and use their brains as much as their physical activity can be important. We want to make sure that we're not doing things that are stressful or fearful for animals, even things we think are positive. It could be that a toy, a squeaky toy that makes a loud noise, most dogs love. One dog's going to think that's a loud noise that scares me. We don't want those toys around them. And always at the top of our list is safety for our staff and for other animals. If you have an animal that may be dangerous, then you can't work with them with some of the interactive tools, human and animal interactive tools that we might talk about. And of course, high energy dogs are special. Many of us have high energy dogs in the shelter. And so a combination of letting them get that energy out, but also, like I said, using mental stimulation is incredibly important for them. When we're doing enrichment, we follow the same sanitation and safety protocols that we do for anything else. So everything has to be disinfected. Everything has to be cleaned between animals. Some things might be single use because they can't be cleaned or disinfected. We have to watch individuals. Some things might not be safe. You give a dog a soft toy that they can tear apart and maybe swallow a piece of it, then that's a dog that can't get soft toys anymore. And everyone should first, before they do any of this kind of work, have some basic safe handling skills for animals, because you might unintentionally do something that stresses an animal out or that's scary, and you need to know how to respond. And you should wear the same protective equipment you would wear with any dog or any cat that you're interacting with in other ways if they need that. So we have cats in ringworm isolation sometimes. They might also need enrichment, but that doesn't mean you take off all the protective gear that you're using to handle them in order to provide it. A lot of what we talk about has to do with food. If you're using food as a enrichment tool, you still have to be careful if they're on a special diet. So where you might give one dog treats or a bully stick or, like I said, peanut butter and a Kong, you might have to consult with your veterinarian about whether they can have those sorts of things, or if you just want to use their regular food as the treat. And all medical protocols, of course, have to be followed. So if they have to be isolated, they have to be isolated. There are ways you can provide enrichment without physical contact. And if, again, special diets or medications all have to be adhered to. There's no exception. So there is some cost to creating an enrichment program, but it doesn't have to be a huge cost. Of course, you want to do staff training. A lot of it is what you would normally do. You're probably going to get some sort of tools, some toys. A lot of that can be donated. When we put out calls for these sorts of enrichment toys, you put a wish list out, whether it's Amazon or I think is it Cuddly that has wish list too. People love to do these sorts of things, but you can also do really inexpensive things. So you see that treat was sort of handmade. It's PVC pipe and with holes in it. I think the holes come pre-drilled in there because it's sort of a French drain, and put small pieces of food in there. That dog is rolling that treat around and getting the food out. And it's just something that occupies their time. So it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be things that are formal toys. Just have to be things that are safe. PVC pipe, of course, can be sterilized, and it would be really difficult for that dog to break. And you're gonna spend some time on some staff time, maybe some volunteer time if you train volunteers, and you're gonna spend some time tracking and recording your outcomes. So what do we want to do? What are the benefits? Of course, reduce stress. We will see hopefully less behavioral deterioration, less illness, reduced length of stay. Animals present much better for adoption. And the people, if you train them to do enrichment and to watch for the results of enrichment, good or bad, you will be training them on recognizing things like body language in animals and what certain facial responses mean. And it'll just be an improvement to the overall quality of life. It'll make it more pleasant to work at the shelter. And you will see, hopefully, animals move through more quickly. So what can we see? We should see behaviors that indicate less stress, less fear, less boredom, more animals exhibiting relaxed body postures, more normal sleep patterns. One of the things that we really fight against more than anything in the shelter, I think, is just allowing animals to sleep, which is one of the most important things you can do. Don't wake up animals in order to do an enrichment activity for them. It is probably counterproductive. They're probably going to wake up when you walk in the room anyway, just to look at them. But if they're sleeping, let them sleep. Never wake up an animal in the shelter because it's so difficult for them to sleep often. And you'll see more animals hopefully coping well with their environment and just feeling more relaxed. And there's quite a bit of data around animals who look relaxed being more attractive to adopters. So we're going to observe everything that animals do when they're interacting with toys or treats or with people. You have to teach your staff about what body language looks like and what a sign of stress looks like. And it might seem like recording all these things could be really time consuming. But like I said, there are some real simple charts, some real simple notes you can make that there are samples of on the association's website within the best practice section that make it real easy. And I think I put some samples of what we use in here later, a little bit later. So good things we're looking for. They're eating well. Body language looks low stress, and they're expressing healthy behaviors. So they're laying down, cats are scratching, maybe soliciting attention, grooming themselves normally in the case of cats especially, and seeking out human interaction. We also want to see just normal activity levels, that sociability, they're sleeping. You see this dog, do not wake that dog up, and that they solicit play, hopefully. Things we don't want to see, we don't want to see them stop eating. We don't want to see them be fearful of people, especially if it's a change. I think one of the things you want to watch for is this animal was eating well, they were soliciting attention, they were friendly, and then there's been a change to their behavior. They're hiding now, they're aggressive, they've become lethargic. Any of those, you should rule out a new medical condition. But certainly it could be that behavior is deteriorating and you need to change or increase the type of enrichment that you are providing. So other bad signs, super aroused, compulsive behaviors like the one I was talking about where they're circling over and over again. Some of them, you see dogs that start chewing on themselves. You'll see dogs just constantly scratching. You'll see them painting the walls with their own feces. Those sorts of behaviors are really potentially problematic. And when they just seem like they're not soliciting attention anymore, or they start having physical issues that are not explainable by a medical condition. So what are we going to do? We are going to provide that enrichment. And I'm going to talk about what we're going to do in a second. And then we're going to observe what the animals do, record it, take a look at what they did. And if we feel like they're interacting well, and this is a helpful enrichment process for them, then we can continue it or we can make changes. And we're going to do the same thing at a programmatic level. So if we say, well, we've got 20 dogs here, we got to enrichment for 10 of them today, it might mean we don't have the infrastructure to provide what we plan to provide to every animal every day, because every animal every day should get something. So if you're only getting to half the animals, then maybe you're trying to do too much, or you need to engage more people. We need to think about our program as a whole, as well as how individual animals are being affected. So some of the basic things we do, it should start at as soon as the animal is taken in. So that animal's kennel should already be well set up for them, with soft surfaces, with a toy, with something for them to interact with right away. And they should be introduced to the environment in a way that immediately says, this is a comfortable environment. This is welcoming. We don't put them in an empty kennel and say, I'm going to come back later with water and a bed and food and set it all up. You'll see our kennels are set up and ready for an animal we put into them. We're going to provide enrichment every day, and it's going to be in a structured way. We're going to have a plan every day for what we're going to do. So you can see these little frozen cups are a great way to do. I think it's like chicken or beef broth with some food frozen in there. You put it in a plastic cup, you put it in a freezer, and you just cut the plastic off, drop that frozen goodie in a kennel, and most dogs will love that. And some of them won't. And so we know they didn't like that. We're gonna have to do something different for that dog. It just melted and made a mess in the kennel. Some dogs love on the end here this little chewy thing with the spikes on it. My dog hates those things with little spikes on it, so he wouldn't like those, even though that one I think was covered in peanut butter. So what you absolutely should have for every animal is a comfortable place to rest, soft bed, a place to hide, especially for cats. Again, there's some good research on cats who have the ability to hide being adopted more quickly, because when they want to hide, they need to hide. And what happens when they're not hiding is they're much more social. Dogs should have something to chew on. Cats should have something to scratch. That can be a difficult thing. There are some tools for that now in shelters that are better than ever, but cats, it's a normal behavior for cats to express, so they should have something. Everybody should have a toy every day. Not only are toys good for them, but again, there's some research showing that people's perception of animals that just have a toy in their kennel is that they are more playful. Just the presence of that toy makes adoption more likely. They should have, if they want it, unless it's a very shy or reserved or animal that really shuns human interaction, should have daily social interaction. And even if they don't, if they don't want social interaction, then you're really probably talking about more of behavior rehabilitation or program, which I'm not really talking about today. Sensory enrichment, I'll talk about a little bit. Sound, smell, mental stimulation of some type. That could be puzzles, could be for dogs, something they have to smell. And everybody should get regular physical exercise. There are ways to do that more easily for dogs and cats, but there are ways to do it for cats. And exposure to enjoyable experiences. So every enclosure should be clean and dry and should be comfortable. Hopefully you can get natural light, but there should be cycles of natural light during the day or light during the day and darkness. Animals should be able to experience darkness at night. You should not have light on 24 hours a day. And hopefully you can create separate functional areas. So I use this picture purposely because it is a kennel that is too small. Cats should not really be housed in kennels like this. Um, because they should be, data is that should be at least 10, 11 square feet of space, and the shelf includes that space. If I had kennels like this, which we did, I would cut portals in them. If you're not familiar with portals, I can guide you to where they go. Basically, you cut a hole in the side so that you connect the two, but it's close together. And you're going to, no matter what stress of this environment, because they can't get away from their litter box, which they do want to do. So if you put a portal in to the next kennel over, you can put a litter box in one, put the food in the other one, and the water in the other one, and give them a resting place and an eating place that's away from their litter box. And the same with dogs, if possible. If you have a two-sided dog kennel, they will usually choose, if you put food on one side, to use the other side as the bathroom. But I want you to see in this picture that there's still an attempt to make this as comfortable as possible. There's a hiding place. You don't have to have necessarily a big physical thing that they hide in. There's draping a towel over an elevated shelf and providing soft surfaces. But again, we should try not to have cats in an environment this small. So this is a little better environment. We want soft beds. Cats like raised platforms. I always find that whatever cat we put into our rooms like this with the highest shelves, they're the cats that like to stay on the floor. I don't know why, but that's just the way it works out. But they should be able to get high if they want. Cats who like to be in high places feel much more comfortable when they get up high. And it is a stress reducer for them. And they should have, again, toys, interesting objects wherever they can. And you can see there's a lot of hiding places in here. And time with people. So this is actually here. 15 minutes at least. This can be volunteers, doesn't have to be staff. And there could be other things you're doing. It's not just 15 minutes of sitting. Could be 15 minutes of sitting and playing. So if you have a feather toy or a cat dancer, this could be the exercise, the physical activity that the cat gets as well. You can do it while you're feeding them, while they're working on their feeding toy, but there should be, for the animals that like social interaction, some time for social interaction with people, because you want to maintain as much as possible what they had in the home. And for animals that like social interaction, it's stressful for them to not get it regularly. So other requirements daily. So part of that interaction is daily sensory enrichment, mental stimulation, exercise, and novel experiences. And I'll talk about novelty in a second. Really, it just means that things are going to change. It's not the same thing every day. It's not the exact same routine every day, but you get interesting things. So some animals also want, conspecifics just means the same species. So some of them want interaction with their own species. These happen to be my cats, so they like being together. They want regular interaction. You may be able to pair up animals that had not been together. Co-housing might work for some. You really have to monitor animals when they are housed together to make sure everybody is eating, everyone has access to food. You can't just assume that everyone is getting along. When you're, especially at feeding time, you really want to spend some time watching and making sure that everyone is getting to the food. Potentially, there should be a bowl for everybody. But sometimes that's a point of issue. And even in dogs that are housed together, we often separate them. Especially with dogs, it can be enjoyable for them, not for all of them, to go into play groups on a regular basis. They should be closely monitored and should be carefully introduced. Not every dog, and I know some people disagree with me, not every dog wants to be in a play group, and not every dog is appropriate for a play group. And it can be very stressful for some of them, and you'll see them sometimes shut down, sometimes you'll see aggression, and sometimes it's more stressful to be in a big group of dogs. Sometimes one dog wants to be with one other dog, sometimes they don't want to be with any. So again, we're customizing for the individual. A little bit about the young. There's some sensitive development periods where you really want to concentrate. For us, I think a lot of the animals at this age are going to be in foster homes. So if they're in the shelter, really need to concentrate on people handling them more frequently than the older animals, getting them out to different places, having different experiences, seeing different kinds of people. I think I know in the shelter environment, it can be concerning that their immune systems are not fully developed. They haven't been fully vaccinated. But I think that if you miss this critical behavior development period, you could have a lifetime of concerning behaviors if you don't properly handle them. But again, I would say ideally for this age group, I would look to put them into foster homes. Isolation, so you can see someone who's got some nice PPE there, and they're treating this cat. You still can provide isolation. So you can still do all the same things. You just have to do it safely. Like I said, we do it for, sorry, go back a second. We still provide enrichment to cats who have ringworm. Often we're just throwing that stuff out afterwards. So there are cheap disposable things you can use, but we want to maintain the same sorts of enrichment that we do in the rest of the building. So we talked about different kinds of enrichment. Cognitive enrichment means we are engaging their brain. So this is, I think, one of the most fun and easiest things to do. You can see this is real simple. This is a cardboard box. Probably got treats inside. It's got some holes cut in it. Not expensive, not difficult. And this cat is just trying to figure out how to get the stuff in the box out of the box. You can use toys like this as their primary feeding tool. So you could put they're capable of getting the food out of there. So if you have a dog like my dog, again, I guess my dog is weird. I keep bringing up weird things he does, but he's just not interested enough to work hard to get food out of a difficult toy. So he might skip a meal if the toy is too difficult. He's the first dog I've ever had that's like that. But if you're going to use a feeding tool, you've got a training. So especially with dogs, you can train cats. We clicker train cats all the time. This is not a clicker training class, but they're about clicking and treating. This dog is just being trained to touch. You can get the dog to touch your hand. Once you can touch your hand, you can touch often people use a dowel, touch the end of a stick, and then you can get them to touch their nose to all kinds of things. Training is a great way to work with both dogs and cats to engage their brains, and it is exhausting for them. It is a good way to tire them out, to get them thinking. And I think it's one of the best ways to make them more adoptable. So first thing people do when they engage with a dog, I find when they're looking to adopt is they ask them to sit. If that dog sits, you've gone a long way in getting that dog into a home. If next thing they do is they pick up a ball and they throw it. If the dog brings the ball back, you're getting close now to them. And the touch command is great because it gets them close. So if I can say touch, if I can teach them to say touch, then they get them close. And what people really want is engagement with that dog they're meeting. Same thing with cat. If you can teach a cat to, like my cat will shake your hand, will give you a high five. If you can train a cat to do that, people are going to take that cat in a second. Wasn't that hard. And this is what I was talking about earlier, some of these problem-solving challenges. You can find all kinds. It used to be sort of Kongs and a couple other things. There's so many different kinds of problem-solving challenge toys now, things that you fill with food or treats, maybe put peanut butter in it, whatever that food is, that then animals have to figure out, and it takes them time and it takes them brain power and it occupies a lot of their time to get, whether it's their daily food or an extra treat, it's a great way without a lot of human time or interaction to get animals thinking. And you can prepare them in advance. You saw the frozen ones. We can have volunteers create dozens of frozen treats. We fill a freezer with them, and then it's real easy to distribute them during the day. So again, commonly stuffed Kongs is one. You can see a really cheap way to do it. This is just, I would have taken the plastic off here, but this is just a tissue box that somebody put a toy in. It's got some treats in it, and they've just got to sort of mess with it to get the food out. Some places will just throw food on the floor, and it just takes time and effort to pick up all that food. Sometimes keep in mind that animals, especially dogs, sense of smell is thousands of times more powerful than ours. Takes up a huge piece of their brain to to smell things, and they have an incredible sense of smell. So like in our training center, we will hide smelly things around the room, behind something, under something, and let them spend their time sniffing that out. And it uses a tremendous amount of brain power. It is a focus for dogs, and it will help to just pass the time for them, give them something that uses their energy and their brain power, because smell is so important. Um, Everyday dogs should get, just like cats, that 15-minute interaction with people should get at least 15 minutes of some sort of activity, whether that's walking, being in a play group, playing fetch. Some will do, we have an agility course here, or at least, if they can't interact with people, then doing something on their own where they can play with an object. Tug is a great game to play. Some people are reluctant to play with tug toys with big ropes. We have big, huge ones for the bigger dogs, but dogs love it. And again, there's some research showing that dogs love you for playing tug with them, the ones who like to do that. And cats cumulatively should have at least 2 hours in a week. Some days, they're cats that don't want to play, of interactively playing with you. That could be just, again, feather toy, a cat dancer. If you're familiar with cat dancers, I don't know why cats love them. They're just a wire with a little rolled up piece of cardboard at the end. And for some reason, every cat goes nuts when they play with a cat dancer. And they should get some interactive play like that, toys that they can play with on their own. You can see the cat agility course there on the top right. The cats really can be trained to it for agility. Usually you're luring them through with some sort of treat or something attractive to them. There are some shelters now that have wheel. If you've seen these cat wheels, that's like a treadmill that's a big wheel. And you might be able to train some cats to walk on a leash like this cat. I know a couple who do. And you want to have animals to have unusual experiences. They don't want to go to the same thing every day or do the same thing every day. You can see this is a real life room at a shelter, so these dogs get to spend some time in a different room outside of their um, normal kennel. If you have multiple play yards, different play yards, some will set up a pit that they're just like the dogs that like to dig, a designated place for them to dig. Field trips are fantastic. We have a dog day out program. There's a whole separate group that has great programs about dog day out, which is field trips. So we have volunteers and other people in the community can basically check out a dog for a day, take them on trails. We give them a list of trails in our community where they can where dogs are allowed. They keep them on a leash. Ours wear a vest that say "Adopt Me." They get all these new sights and smells. And go to a unique place, just like you might take your dog somewhere like that to get them some exercise. Ours would need that too. Some of our folks who do these field trips actually just take the dogs home with them for the day, and the dogs go to sleep, which is a great thing too. But you want to give them something different. We don't want to just give them a Kong stuffed with peanut butter every day. That's going to they'll probably eat the peanut butter, but it's not as stimulating as something new and different that has to be explored, or a different kind of puzzle toy that has to be figured out. And we want to try to stimulate every sense, what they see, what they hear, what they taste, what they smell. Everything can be varied, and everything can be a novel experience and can be varied daily or at least weekly. So great visual stimuli. This is I think it's still the same, Humane Society of Boulder Valley in Colorado. So they did this really smart thing. If you see these birds hanging from the ceiling, they're hanging under the air vents. So the heat and cooling is blowing right at these very light objects, which keeps them moving, and just stimulates the cats to see this moving object. So that's sort of the mobiles. Some places use lava lamps. There are places that have aquariums. There are places that have water fountains with something moving. You'll see, I think here, a bird feeder. So at our shelter, we have a lot of the larger rooms that cats are in have windows to the outside. So on the outside, we put bird feeders. not this close to those windows, but 10 feet off or so. And so there's a lot of birds there all the time. The birds probably don't know the cats are there or don't notice. And the cats love seeing this wildlife stimulating them constantly. The other we want to consider is what animals are hearing. Sometimes they're hearing a lot of barking. Hopefully, you can get cats to a place where they're not hearing barking all the time. But we have a network of Sonos speakers throughout our shelter that is playing calming music for most of the day, not all day and night. Just like darkness, we want quiet time. So it's quiet, soothing music for them. The sound of water fountains, just like the motion of the water, the sound can be calming. And there are machines. I'm not endorsing a product, but there are that little speaker, which is the ICOM cat. It's called, and there's an ICOM dog version. So even if you have a place where and I wouldn't recommend necessarily putting them in with a cat like that, because that cat will probably knock that little speaker off and break it pretty quickly. But if you have a place that doesn't have power, a place to plug things in, that can be a nice solution. And it doesn't have to be there all day and night, but there is, again, good evidence that music is calming. And the sound of people talking can be calming for some animals, which is why they list audiobooks. And the sound of birds. We've had good success. We have some volunteers who will bring their iPads in to the cat rooms, sit there with them, and just show videos of birds and the sounds of birds and those birds singing. And the cats actually love it. They really engage with the videos. And we want to vary. So probably we're feeding the same food every day. We feed hills every day, but you can do different kinds of treat type foods, and they should be different daily if you can. We talked about the flavored ice blocks, but while you might want to keep their regular diet the same, you can have variety in the ancillary things, the treats, the flavors. So I would recommend against having exactly the same treats and those sorts of flavors daily. You do want to talk to your veterinarian about quantity. I think there is a tendency for us to feel like food is love and everybody wants treats and give as many treats as you can. But then we start seeing animals gain weight, which is another source of stress potentially and potential physical issues. So you do want to measure out the amount that you're giving every day and not just endlessly provide treats to any animal take them. Smell, olfactory stimulation. So this is a great place to smell. The old fire hydrant, dogs love to smell that. When they're out on walks, volunteers or staff who are walking, dogs should be instructed to let them smell. They get to a point where they want to smell something, let them smell something. Unless it looks like something dangerous, they're like, there's an unknown liquid in the parking lot, I would avoid that. But generally, if you get to a place like this where there's a great fire hydrant, just let them sniff at it. It's very stimulating. There are various smells that you can introduce to the environment, essential oils, you've got to make sure they're pet safe, spices, sense of prey. So in hunting shops, you can get these prey scents, not predator scents. You want prey scents, and there are quite a few different commercially available pheromones. We've even seen things that imitate the smell of things like bacon. You can get now sprays, air freshener for some reason that smells like bacon or other meats. Great smell for them to have and something unique. Feel away, and there's a dog version too, is to, again, not recommending any specific commercial brand, but it's a spray that is shown to be calming for cats. You will see sometimes sort of plugins for them that just sort of put that smell out into the air. That doesn't work well, at least in our shelter, because our air exchange system is so strong that it's probably just pulling that smell out faster than the cats are actually getting it. So if you're going to use something like that, we will take Feel Away and spray it onto a towel or something small that can be put into a cat's kennel or a dog's kennel. You don't want to spray the whole thing because the cat, remember, they're individuals. They might not like it. It might be disturbing to them. You want to give them the ability to get away from it if the smell is too strong or just distasteful to them. Um, but it's something, it's again, another tool that's available, just has to be used properly. And our environment's a little different than, say, a home environment where you might just plug in a diffuser and it'll spread through the whole room. Might not do that in a modern shelter where air exchange is constant. So I just want to acknowledge again, I think we got some time for questions. The folks who worked on this document, these were the members of the committee that put this together. I don't have all of their initials after some of their names, but some very qualified folks on this list who worked to put this together. All people in the industry, veterinarians, behaviorists, who some of you may know. Kelly Boland's here in New England, and it's probably some of you probably work with her. And if you go to, again, the association's website, you'll find all of these, what we call exhibits. So the daily enrichment sheets, the cat enrichment sheet, like I talked about, real simple things. And you might come up with your own little abbreviations for what it means for an animal's response. So nobody needs to write a book every day about every animal. We have clipboards on the wall with a piece of paper. That piece of paper is good for a week. Yeah, animal's name, what kennel they're in, and what did we do today, and what was their response? Real simple columns, real simple notes. In the end of the week, our behavior manager can look at that and see, what's the trend for the week. Here is where that breast. Oh, I don't know why Kristen's email's in there, but I'm sure you can email Kristen if you want. We presented this before years ago. And you go to the association, and actually if you go to the drop down that says resources, then you will get to a page of best practices to find this. All those documents. And whoop, I thought there was one more page, but there isn't. And I don't know, are there a bunch of questions? I saw a lot going on in the chat. I don't know if there are questions.
So I shared some links while you were speaking about some of the things you mentioned, about the portals and cat dancers, for anyone that wasn't aware of those things. But we do have two questions that were submitted. One was, how would you recommend getting a dog day out program started?
Yeah, so I would start with, there is a manual that I think you can get both from ASPCA Pro. There's also one that was created by, I think it's a Humane Society of Silicon Valley. It has a pretty significant program, and it was started, I think the first one that I'm aware of was at Hawaii Humane. But there are, so don't start from scratch. Would be my recommendation. Go to one of those three sources, and they have manuals and real simple books. We started with our volunteers, and we've expanded it to more people who can just walk in and do it, which is how it was originally started in Hawaii. They started because they didn't have a lot of volunteers. They had a lot of tourists and a lot of people who were staying there for a week and just wanted to hang out with the dogs or see a dog because they left their dog behind. And they would say, okay, well, why don't you take this dog for a walk? Here's a trail you can take them on. It was a very attractive program to one of our regular sponsors who put money into getting us vests for the dogs and bandanas for them that say they're adoptable. We got t-shirts for the people walking. We got backpacks that say, this is ask me about this adoptable dog. So they're wearing this backpack, and the backpack has some supplies in it, poop bags, a water bottle. And we make sure they have a phone that they can call us, and they know where they can and can't go and follow direction. But, you're basically doing the same volunteer training, and there's a little bit of extra instruction because we want to make sure these dogs are going to only places dogs are allowed, for one, that they always stay on a leash, and that they know what to do in case of an emergency. If something happens, that they have a specific person on staff they can contact. And that there's a little bit of training in terms of watching for the condition of the dog. Are they getting tired? We don't want them climbing a mountain with a dog that's been in a shelter for a month and maybe hasn't been getting a tremendous amount of exercise. You don't want to take them on a 4-hour hike up a mountain. we're usually going on fairly short, flat trails. And some of them will take them into town. They'll take them to a coffee shop where dogs are allowed to sit outside. And that's a great way to just give them exposure. So it's really combined. So you have to start with, sometimes it's hard to get buy-in internally. So it helps to have those outside resources, but be real open with your staff about the benefits of it. And there've been some real clear benefits. And I would let people know, if you just want to take them home for the day and hang out at your house and let them go to sleep, there's some tremendous benefit to just getting out and letting a dog sleep.
Thanks, Brad. I'll add in too that we will be hosting Maui Humane at some point in 2025 for a webinar to talk all about their dog day out program specifically. So keep an eye on our website for that. Another question we had of, do you have any suggestions for alternative treats for dogs with sensitive digestive systems or allergies even?
Yeah, I mean, some of the companies that make prescription diets also make treats for that are similar or aligned with those prescription diets. So I would look, for us, we would probably look at Hills, but Royal Canin might have something too, Purina might as well. They have treats for that align similarly with the diets that they're selling for prescription. Even if the dog with a sensitive stomach is on a prescription diet, and those treats usually aren't prescription treats, but they do sort of align with having a dog on a prescription diet. That's where I would start.
Thank you. And then we have a question about cat enrichment. Have you come across anything, methods or ideas that turned out to be really bad for the cats, even though in theory it was a good idea? Have you had anything pop up?
I think for a lot of I think a lot of people believe that having cats in a big room altogether is better than having an individual kennels. And for some cats, that's good, and for some, it's not. And that's one of the most common issues I see, is that some cats are very uncomfortable in an environment with any other cats, especially a lot of other cats. And if they're not introduced well, it can create more stress. So I wouldn't assume that you're better off having a cat in a big room with 5 other cats than that cat being in, say, a good sized kennel, not like the kennel I showed a picture of, but something that's, say, 10, 11 square feet, where they get other kinds of enrichment. So that more isn't always better if they're forced to be with other animals. So that can be stressful.
Excellent. And what type of problem solving challenges do you suggest for cats?
So you can do something similar with food. I mean, a lot of them will respond to food, more treats, like really stinky treats that are in, and you can get puzzle toys for cats just like you can for dogs now. They become much more common. And again, some cats, probably more cats than dogs, are just going to ignore it. I mean, they don't care. But you can try, if you can try giving them food in one of those toys before feeding them. But again, you really have to go back and monitor and see, did they figure out the toy and eat? Because you don't want to end up withholding food from them for the day. But you can certainly make an attempt to feed them in a puzzle toy. You can get them now. There's tons of options, and they're cat-sized Kongs. And let them roll it around and get just their regular same amount of food, put it in a puzzle toy like that. Could be easy for them to get out. A Kong isn't that hard for a cat to get food out of. They just poke it around. And some cats just won't do it. So you have to go back and make sure they've eaten. Otherwise, you have to provide them with food.
Okay, and then there was a question about are there specific behavior requirements for dogs if they're going to be part of the dog day out program, or I guess restrictions on certain dogs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, partially it's a match between who's taking them and who's going out. We do some in beyond enrichment, some behavior modification. So we wouldn't send any dogs out that have concerning behaviors, that we're worried about them being on, say, a trail where they pass other dog, because you have to be prepared for your dog to be on a trail, which is often narrow, where they're going to encounter other people and dogs. So they have to be able to that might be a different way of thinking about your dogs than you normally do. But think about the environment they're going to be in, and they're going to be in an environment where, I'm on, say, a walking trail or even a sidewalk where I'm going to pass in close contact with unknown people and animals. and what's the expectation of that behavior. So think about dogs that are able to do that. So and generally walk reasonably well on a leash. Very few of our dogs walk really well on a leash, but if we have I wouldn't send a 100-pound dog out with a 90-pound person when that 100-pound dog pulls really hard. We usually send them out with walking harnesses, either the Weiss Walkie or a different sort of walking harness, and double leash them to the collar and the harness to be sure, but usually they're on some kind of harness that makes it difficult to for them to pull very hard.
Okay. And do you have any suggestions for the best housing for small animals like rabbits?
Rabbits, so we have small rooms that a lot of the rabbits are in. So some of them are on the floor. We've custom built a couple MSP. If you've been to an MSPCA shelter, we have similar housing to what they have, which is sort of a raised platform with glass around it, glass high enough that they can't jump out, or ours are covered because we've had some jump out. Maybe our glass isn't high enough, where they're in a big open space. We've occasionally will have them in sort of the commercial, just plastic bottomed, cage on top sort of count, but those are usually smaller than you would want. But we have built in sort of units where they live in, which is my preference, and they're not necessarily that hard to build. I mean, ours was just commercially available countertop material on the bottom and glass coming up the sides.
I'll share at my shelter at Humane. It's not ideal, they're on the floor, but we use X pens, like exercise pens that you would use for puppies. And for the larger rabbits, we'll build them out, 2X pens wide. So they have a lot of really good floor space and the spot to hide and spot to play and whatnot, and litter box and everything.
Really important for rabbits and guinea pigs to have a hiding place.
Okay, so I think we have time maybe for one more question, and I'm trying to bounce around to make sure we got some different things here. How about suggestions for alternatives for frozen Kongs, filling frozen Kongs?
Well, like you saw it doesn't have to be Kongs. You could use any kind of, but like you saw in that picture, we actually use paper cups where we fill a paper cup with broth of some kind. It could be chicken broth, could be beef broth. You fill that cup, we throw some treats in there, or just food, just the regular dog food we feed. Sometimes we stick a bully stick in there. It looks like a lollipop sticking out. We put all those on a tray, put them in the freezer. Once they freeze, we just cut the paper off, and then you've got this just frozen, this block of ice. I've seen people do it with metal buckets so that if it melts, it doesn't get everywhere, and they're just sort of licking down into the bucket. But I think, and it's again an activity that volunteers really like. I mean, we have volunteers who buy the broth, who bring it in and love making it all. And it's a good activity for if you have a volunteer program that involves adults and kids together. It's a great activity for kids. They like making these things.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brad. If you don't mind, if you wouldn't mind sending me the link for that resource page on the association, so that I can send that out with the Zoom webinar, so that everyone will have access to that. There were a couple people who had trouble finding it on the website, so we'll share that link out when we send out the recording. And again, thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you, Brad, for this great information that you shared. And please go ahead and register for our upcoming conference in March at the Burlington Marriott. And check out our webinar on February 12th with Jessica Dolce for Compassion Fatigue, the Foundations. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.